Kitzbühel is a small Austrian town located with a population of just over 8,000 people. Despite its size, more than 20,000 tourists visit every winter, drawn by the local mountain slopes. For many decades, this place has been known as a winter resort for the wealthy. Additionally, there are numerous celebrations that attract athletes and fans from around the world. Since October 2018, the ski slopes have been prepared before the winter season. The hotels and tourism companies have been making the final preparations to welcome numerous guests. However, the joyful events were overshadowed by the horrific murders. Nadine Hinterholzer was born in Austria, grew up in a close-knit family. From an early age, she was energetic, cheerful, and quite pretty. She had a large circle of friends who loved her for her straightforwardness, good sense of humor, and pleasant demeanor. Nadine lived with her parents and older brother in a spacious house in Kitzbühel. At the age of 14, significant changes began in her life when she met a guy named Andreas E., who was 20 at the time. He already looked like an adult, while she was still a teenager. A 6-year age difference at that age can seem significant. Despite this, they felt a mutual attraction. After several dates, they began a romantic relationship in secret from Nadine's relatives. Eventually, they both realized that age could pose the greatest obstacle in their relationship. Nadine was concerned that her older boyfriend could face legal issues because of his involvement with a minor, but they were reluctant to break up. At first, Nadine carefully hinted to her parents about the significant changes in her life, which raised some alarms for her mother and father. However, Andreas was determined and decided to take a bold step. He personally approached Nadine's family to seek permission for their relationship. From the beginning, he emphasized that this was not a fleeting affair. He wanted to build a future with her but did not want to rush her, allowing her to finish school and pursue her education. Andreas was familiar with her brother, Kevin. Soon after meeting, they became close friends. During home visits, Andreas's initiative was highly appreciated by Nadine's parents, especially after she described him as well-mannered, polite, and loving. Overall, the family liked Andreas, so they permitted Nadine to continue their relationship. Nadine had just entered the challenging teenage years. Her parents believed that a relationship with an older boyfriend could positively influence her, as he could take care of her and protect her from unpleasant situations. Andreas acted as though Nadine meant a lot to him, growing closer to her family. Initially, they spent all their free time together, and after 3 years, Andreas moved in with them. Nadine and Andreas posted statuses on social media indicating their engagement. While Andreas had intentions of getting married, he respected Nadine's desires to finish school and make her own life decisions before rushing into marriage. They continued dating for several years, to the point where Nadine's family began to treat Andreas like their own son. Finally, Nadine turned 18, officially becoming an adult, while Andreas was already 24. They decided it was time to move out and live independently. Nadine's grandmother significantly assisted them by offering her apartment for Nadine and Andreas to settle in. By this time, Nadine had completed her schooling. She intended to continue her studies at college. She did not plan on marriage or children, which disappointed Andreas slightly, as she wanted to establish herself first. Nadine enrolled in driving school and attended classes with her friends, who often picked her up. She aspired to become a professional dancer and build a career in this field. To their relatives, Nadine and Andreas represented the epitome of romance. Although the age difference made their relationship seem unconventional, it was evident that their bond was built on love and mutual understanding. It seemed as though their lives were just beginning, with no threats on the horizon. Andreas had faced Nadine's transitional phase early in their relationship when she was just 14, and they had managed to cope with that difficult period, maintaining, even strengthening their bond. However, after she reached adulthood, some other challenges began to emerge in their relationship. Andreas was seriously determined to pursue further development, family life, and children, but he could not achieve the same aspirations from his beloved. A 24-year-old man, he worked as a bricklayer and spent the lion's share of his time, energy on his job. Upon returning home in the evening, he just wanted to relax with his girlfriend in their apartment, but this did not meet the new needs of an 18-year-old. While she had already become an adult, she still wanted to relax, spend time with friends, and go to parties. Previously, they had constantly gone out together, but now Andreas wanted to spend time at home in front of the TV, which was too boring for Nadine. Initially, she managed to persuade him to go for walks or spend time outside their home, but over time, this became nearly impossible. Andreas began to refuse such outings, citing fatigue and stating that he had to work in the morning. He complained that he wanted to relax and recharge but felt unsupported by her. During this period, the age difference between them became particularly apparent. Nadine was at the peak of her activity and craved entertainment, while she realized that Andreas had already moved past that phase of life, who now had other interests. However, she was not willing to adjust to him or give in. She wanted to live the life of a young woman, socialize, and have fun with her friends. All of this led to conflicts beginning to arise between them. Nadine even told Andreas that if this continued, she would have to break up with him. Despite her repeatedly expressing this not only to him but also to her friends and relatives, he did not take her words seriously. He saw no reason for a breakup, insisting that he still loved her, hoped she would calm down over time and everything would return to normal. He continued planning a lavish wedding, believing it was the right time since their relationship had lasted for 5 years. He wanted to change his social media status from engaged to married, but her insistence on remaining single, along with her constant reproaches and talk of breaking up, loomed over their relationship. Andreas increasingly became intrusive and rude. Nadine felt that he simply wanted to control her completely and grew angry that he could not succeed. She even began to tell her friends that they had always had problems that she had kept silent about. In the summer of 2018, Nadine made the firm decision to break up, but she did not want any conflict. She hoped they could maintain a friendly relationship. At that time, she was 19 years old, and Andreas was already 25. According to Nadine, her boyfriend was never cruel or aggressive and did not limit her communication with others. The major issue was his passivity and jealousy. He could not stand it when she was in the company of other guys. She even lost all her male friends after meeting Andreas at the age of 14. Nadine told her friend that they had decided to separate and live apart. She was sure that her boyfriend took it calmly. She believed their relationship was officially over after 5 years together. Nadine and Andreas stopped dating. He moved out of her grandmother's apartment and returned to his parents' house. The idea of maintaining friendly relations seemed to work as they both had mutual friends and kept in touch with their families. Andreas continued to be friends with Nadine's older brother, Kevin, as if nothing had happened. They were peers and had a lot in common. However, this was the calm before the storm. During this period, doubts began to surface during their communication. Nadine increasingly suspected that Andreas was not taking the breakup calmly. Kevin thought Andreas had accepted this as another whim of his girlfriend and was simply waiting for a signal from Nadine regarding the restoration of their relationship. The friends had discussed this many times. Andreas could not accept that it was truly over. Thoughts and conversations about his ex consumed almost all of his time. Andreas's behavior approached obsession. He seized every opportunity to communicate with Nadine, asking for a second chance, trying to win her back, even continuing to talk about marriage and children. Within the first month of the breakup, it became clear that Andreas did not understand the situation and was simply in denial. He did not realize that they were no longer a couple. Each time Nadine firmly said no, insisting that everything was over between them, she labeled their relationship as her youthful mistake, even confiding this to her other friends. All of this hurt Andreas, but he continued to endure. He still hoped for a reconciliation. Some of his friends sympathized with him, but by the end of the second month after the breakup, they too began to notice that his behavior resembled stalking. He showed up everywhere Nadine went, always initiating conversation. Andreas's persistence caused Nadine to start avoiding him. She tried to gently indicate that their relationship was over, but he only became more determined. When she tried to stop their meetings, he made efforts to interact with her. Nadine's friends and family knew that she was consistently rejecting his advances, but he was spreading different stories to his own circle. Even 2 months after the breakup, he still believed that she wanted to be with him and thought she was only trying to make him pursue her. Kevin tried to tell Andreas to move on and date other girls, but he remained stubborn. As of October 5, 2018, the situation remained unchanged. Nadine and Andreas had officially been separated for 3 months. Nadine's entire family was aware of the breakup. Even his parents tried to convince him to reconsider. That evening, Andreas spent time with Kevin. They visited several bars but didn't stay long in any of them. Eventually, they ended up at one bar, where Kevin unexpectedly saw Nadine. He found it surprising to run into her, especially since, despite the town being small, there were enough bars catering to tourists that it was unlikely they would see each other regularly. Andreas appeared to either be following Nadine, receiving updates on her location, or simply searching for her as he moved between various places throughout the evening. Kevin knew that for the past 3 months, Andreas had been claiming that he and Nadine loved each other and intended to get married once he won her back. While similar situations had occurred before, this time things were different. Nadine was not just with her friend, she was also accompanied by another man. When Andreas noticed this, he instantly became angry, approached Nadine, taking her hand and starting an argument. He attempted to pull her out of the bar, but she resisted. Her 24-year-old friend, Florian Jani, intervened, positioning himself between Andreas and Nadine. He insisted that he was merely a friend and not romantically involved with her, claiming they had only just met. Nonetheless, Andreas was not calmed by this explanation. He was furious that Nadine was spending time with another man and struggled to contain his anger, nearly provoking a fight in the bar. Nadine, Florian, and her brother worked hard to soothe him, prevented Andreas from asserting control over Nadine. After significant effort, they managed to calm him down, though he was still in tears. Feeling overwhelmed, Andreas chose to leave the bar, not wanting to remain in that environment. Kevin stayed behind with Nadine and Florian, worried about their safety. Andreas' outburst was alarming, and now Nadine felt genuinely concerned for her well-being. She didn't want to remain in the bar either, but feared that her ex might be waiting outside. After waiting to ensure Andreas had left, the entire group decided to walk Nadine home. Florian drove her back, even offered to stay the night to help her feel safe. Overwhelmed by fear, Nadine accepted his offer. This choice would prove to have significant consequences. Around 4 a.m., Andreas could no longer contain his jealousy and chose to contact his ex again. When he reached her house, he noticed an unfamiliar car in the driveway, which he recognized as Florian's. It became clear that Andreas hadn't gone home after leaving the bar. Instead, he had remained in the parking lot, secretly watching the group. He observed that Florian was with Nadine, while no one else had left the house. This only fueled his anger. Andreas suspected that Nadine was lying and dating someone new. He felt they were enjoying themselves together without a care. He resolved to confront both Nadine and Florian about the situation. Furious, Andreas jumped out of his car and started ringing the doorbell while banging on the front door. Instead of Nadine and her friend, her father, 59-year-old Rupert, answered. He came out to calm Andreas, who was shouting. Rupert insisted it was too late for arguments and asked Andreas to leave until morning, when they could discuss everything calmly. Rupert was aware of the situation involving Florian at the bar, reassured Andreas that Nadine and Florian were just friends. Understanding and approachable, Rupert shared a cigarette with Andreas, invited him to talk outside on the street. They had a conversation on various topics, as Rupert probably hoped this would soothe Andreas and persuade him to leave. Having known each other for several years, Andreas had become a valued member of Nadine's family. Nadine's parents treated him well, which is why Rupert chose not to call the police to remove his daughter's ex-boyfriend. After speaking with Rupert, Andreas seemed to feel less agitated. He got into his car and drove off, while Rupert returned inside to go to bed. However, just a short distance down the road, Andreas began to feel annoyed again. He came back 15 minutes later, knocking on the door and ringing the bell, which disturbed everyone in the house. Nadine and Kevin came out to confront him. Unlike Rupert, they were very upset, wanted to make it clear that Andreas needed to leave. A new argument broke out at the front door. No one was holding back their words. Nadine was determined to completely cut off ties with her bothersome ex and insisted that there should be no further relationship between them. She demanded that he vanish from her life for good. Kevin backed his sister, stating that their friendship was overdue to Andreas's stalking behavior. He was worried about Andreas's unhealthy actions and wanted nothing more to do with him. Meanwhile, Andreas felt betrayed, convinced that Nadine had been unfaithful and that Kevin was protecting her. He now felt abandoned by Kevin, who he believed should have supported him instead. Before leaving, Andreas tried to find out if Nadine had cheated. However, she firmly told him it was not his concern since they hadn't been dating for several months. At that moment, Andreas had a shocking realization: Nadine had actually broken up with him 3 months ago, and all his attempts to win her back were in vain. No one expected him to pursue her anymore. Feeling angry, Andreas decided to go home, choosing to avoid confronting his feelings of hurt. At 5:30 a.m. on October 6, 2018, Andreas returned to his ex's house. He began knocking on the door and ringing the doorbell, but he did not shout. This time, Rupert responded. He was already very irritated because Andreas had kept the whole family awake the previous night. When Rupert opened the door, he intended to angrily chase Andreas away and threaten to call the police, but he was cut off before he could finish. Andreas pulled out a gun, shot him in the head twice, killing him instantly. He then stepped over Rupert's body and entered the house. Nadine's mother, 51-year-old Andrea, rushed outside when she heard the noise. Tragically, she became the next victim. Andreas then attacked Kevin. He went upstairs and attempted to enter Nadine's room, but Nadine and Florian had locked the door. Andreas determined that the quickest way to reach her was through the balcony. He went outside, climbed the bars on the building's facade, broke the window, opened fire on both Nadine and her friend Florian. This horrific event unfolded within just a few minutes, resulting in the deaths of 5 people. After committing the crime, Andreas drove to the Kitzbühel police station. He arrived around 6 a.m. and placed a gun in front of a police officer at the entrance. He confessed to having just shot 5 people. Additionally, he handed over a knife and a baseball bat, which he had used to break into the Hinterholzer home. He used the bat to shatter a window and gain access to Nadine's room. While the knife was never used, it appears he brought it along for safety. The police discovered 5 bodies at the scene, and the details of their deaths confirmed Andreas's account. Each victim had been attacked at close range with multiple bullets. Florian suffered gunshot wounds to his hands as he tried to defend himself. There was nothing missing from the house. The toxicology report indicated that Andreas was sober, with no alcohol or banned substance in his system. He had no prior legal issues. The entire community of Kitzbühel was in shock over the incident. In this close-knit town, crimes, especially such violent ones, were extremely rare. All the neighbors were familiar with the Nadine family, known for their kindness and helpfulness. They had good relationships with everyone in the area. Both the victim's family and the suspect's family were respected in the community. The community especially mourned the loss of Florian Jani, a talented young hockey player and goalkeeper, who was seen as a promising individual. His compassion for Nadine ultimately led to his tragic death. Friends who knew Nadine well later stated that she had no romantic involvement with Florian. They were simply friends who enjoyed good conversations. However, some speculated that Florian stayed the night to protect her, and suggested that they might have already begun dating. Following the tragedy, a small memorial with photographs of the victims was set up in the local church. Over the course of the month it remained there. More than 1,000 heartfelt notes were left by mourners and caring individuals in memory of the victims. Andreas had been in custody in a special cell designed for inmates needing extra supervision. The police considered him at high risk for end one's own life, so they monitored him closely. He spent 23 hours a day in solitary confinement and was allowed only 1 hour outside to walk in the yard. When the family of Andreas learned what had happened, they addressed the town's residents, expressed their condolences. They also informed the police that a gun belonging to Andreas's brother was missing. The brother had a permit for the firearm, which he kept at home for self-defense. Unfortunately, Andreas knew how to access it and where the key to the safe was. The gun's serial numbers matched, and Andreas confirmed that he had stolen the gun from the house. At a press conference, Andreas's parents expressed their belief that he should face appropriate consequences for his actions. They mentioned that their son's mental health had declined while he was in prison. Despite widespread public anger, the family attempted to explain Andreas's behavior. His father stated that Andreas had been struggling with depression, particularly following his breakup with Nadine. His mother added that while her son might have had mental health challenges, it is unclear why he and his family never pursued mental health treatment. Andreas faces charges for murdering 5 people with a firearm and for breaking and entering. Andreas's lawyer intends to base their defense on his client's questionable mental state. Andreas claims that after hearing hurtful remarks from Nadine and her brother, who attempted to force him out of the house, he lost touch with reality and was unable to control his actions. He states that the only thought in his mind was his desire to kill the cheater. He described this experience as a state of emotional turmoil. The lawyer hoped this would reduce his client's culpability. However, the prosecution argued that Andreas was merely pretending and insisted that he was aware of his actions, he fit to stand trial. The lawyer disagreed with this assessment. In the end, the court ruled that there were no grounds for reducing Andreas's criminal responsibility. Andreas believed he deserved a fair punishment and did not want to evade responsibility for his crime. From the outset, he intended to confess. He willingly went to the police station and had no plans to take back his confession made the morning after the massacre. His lawyers stressed Andreas's mental state during the case. Assessments revealed that he suffered from a disorder that left him with 2 choices: either walk away and forget or return to kill. There was no middle ground. Once he understood that he could not regain his relationship with Nadine, he became obsessed with the notion that Nadine should not belong to anyone. As soon as the murder trial started, Andreas confessed to the crime. He believed that confessing would make the legal process easier and reduce trauma for the victims' families, as well as for himself. He shared details about his relationship with Nadine, discussing his jealousy and the reasons behind his actions. He described Nadine as an attractive girl who attracted many admirers, which fueled his jealousy. Andreas held traditional views about women and felt that a good woman should behave differently. He couldn't accept Nadine's decision to break up, insisting that she was his property and that she shouldn't date or spend time with other men, even as just friends. On the night of the incident, he was also affected by Kevin's betrayal. Nadine's parents were annoyed with Andreas, and he was afraid of losing her entire family, with whom he felt closer than to his own. He claimed that after the breakup, his family did not provide the support he desperately needed, leading him to lose 10 kilograms. Ultimately, in a moment of rage, Andreas lost control and killed them all. Andreas showed remorse and offered condolences to the families of his victims, but some believed he was merely trying to get a lighter sentence. Prosecution witnesses testified that Nadine continuously told Andreas that their relationship was over. Despite this, he kept asking for another chance, hoping to get back together, and he stalked her without truly grasping the situation. During the hearing, Andreas came across as insecure. He spoke softly, often mumbling to himself, and cried during emotional moments. At times, he seemed to misunderstand the gravity of what happened, viewing it as an accident. The prosecution contended that there was clear evidence of a brutal, premeditated murder involving 5 victims. They argued that Andreas had ample time to think through his actions as he drove to and from his ex-girlfriend's house. When he returned home, he took 3 items: a gun, a knife, and a baseball bat, indicating that he had meticulously planned his actions. The choice to take a knife suggested he intended to ensure there would be no survivors among Nadine's family and her friend Florian. During the hearing, the prosecution pointed out that Andreas had changed his marital status on social media from engaged to widower. Andreas claimed that this change occurred shortly after Nadine's murder, but some friends and acquaintances suggested that Andreas may have done so intentionally beforehand. Just a few months after their breakup, he started reacting more aggressively to Nadine's rejections. He often expressed a desire for her to be dead and sent messages accusing her of dating someone new, voicing a wish to kill that person. At the time, these statements were not taken seriously. The lawyer argued that these were simply emotional responses to rejection, which Andreas struggled to accept. However, this did not necessarily mean he intended to kill her. Nadine's friends mentioned that she had been feeling fearful of her ex lately and had been trying to avoid him as much as she could. She discovered that Andreas had been engaging in violent acts, such as beheading chickens with a machete and torturing cats. His actions appeared to be quite dangerous. During the trial, the defendant struggled to answer many questions, especially regarding why, in addition to Nadine, her friend Florian, brother Kevin, and her parents were killed. The lawyer argued that this showed Andreas lacked control over his actions and didn't fully grasp what was happening. However, the Austrian justice system made a definitive ruling: the murder of 5 people could not be seen as a mitigating factor. The idea that Andreas was insane was dismissed. By the end of the trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Nevertheless, this doesn't mean he will be incarcerated for life. In Austria, individuals with life sentences are often released after an average of 21 years. Furthermore, the lawyer vowed to continue advocating for his client's release and planned to file appeals. On a calm November morning in a close community in North Carolina, 13-year-old Hania Aguilar had taken her aunt's car keys that morning so she could start the car before school. That's when a witness saw a man dressed in black with a yellow scarf covering his face approach the girl and force her into a green 2003 Ford Expedition. Her terrified scream filled the air as the vehicle drove off. This event sparked a heartbreaking mystery that disturbed the entire community. What happened to Hania? Hania Aguilar was born on March 21, 2005, in the United States to Miguel and Celsa, who are both immigrants from Guatemala seeking a better life. Hania was remembered by family and friends as a cheerful, loving, and kind-hearted girl with big dreams. She was outgoing, dedicated as a daughter, sister, and friend. She leaving a positive impact on those around her with her friendly demeanor, engaging conversations. From a young age, she had a deep passion for music, often filling her home with the sounds of her violin. In 2018, Hania's family was living comfortably in Rosewood Mobile Home Park in Lumberton, North Carolina, a neighborhood mainly populated by Hispanic immigrants. Hania, 13, was an outstanding 8th grade student at Lumberton Middle School. However, on the morning of November 5, 2018, their peaceful life was disrupted. Around 7 a.m., while Hania was warming up the family vehicle outside their home, a stranger approached her from behind. He grabbed her and pushed her into the vehicle. A nearby neighbor heard screams and saw a man dressed in black with a yellow bandana forcing Hania into the green SUV, which quickly drove away. Hania's younger sister, who was outside at the time, witnessed the horrific event. Authorities were notified right away, and by 10 a.m., an Amber Alert was issued for Hania. She is a 13-year-old Hispanic girl, about 125 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. On the day she was taken, she was wearing a blue floral shirt, blue jeans. The Lumberton police, assisted by local and federal agencies, began a thorough search. Helicopters flew over the Rosewood area, and police officers stopped cars entering the region, asking drivers for any information. During a press conference, the police chief announced that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children had shared Hania's details with authorities in Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Investigators indicated there was no evidence that Hania was acquainted with her abductor. Her family was fully cooperative throughout the investigation. The community, friends, and neighbors joined law enforcement in the search, showing their support, concern. On November 6th, Celsa made an emotional appeal through the FBI, expressing her profound love for her daughter and her desire for her safe return. She forgave those responsible and said her only wish was to reunite with her daughter. The case swiftly attracted national attention. The FBI, working with the governor's office, announced a $20,000 reward for any information that could help locate Hania. On the same day, a surveillance video was released showing the stolen green 2003 Ford Expedition shortly after the abduction. Authorities encouraged anyone with home surveillance footage that might be helpful to come forward. The vehicle had peeling paint on the hood, a sticker on the rear window, and North Carolina license plates. The next day, the Ford Expedition was discovered abandoned in a wooded area about 3 miles from Hania's home. Evidence from the vehicle was sent to the FBI laboratory in Virginia for analysis. Later that day, the FBI released a disturbing video showing a man walking purposefully through the area, as if stalking his target. This footage unsettled viewers, disclosing the calculated nature of the abduction. Notably, he was the only person seen in the area at the time of the abduction. This crucial footage aimed to identify the man and assess his possible involvement in the case. Authorities urged the public to assist in identifying the suspect. The investigation intensified as the community remained hopeful for Hania's safe return. As the search became more urgent, investigators turned their attention to a new lead. They believed that the girl's unique white Adidas sneakers, which had colorful stitching on the heel, could be key to finding her. Authorities speculated that the captor might have discarded the sneakers and urged the community to report any related discoveries. The FBI emphasized the need for public vigilance, reminding everyone that even the smallest detail could be important. They carefully analyzed the evidence and used media outreach to request assistance. The search for Hania was highlighted on the FBI's website as the most wanted case of the week. A Spanish-language podcast was released to ask for tips. Additionally, authorities directly appealed to hunters in Robeson County, asking them to check any surveillance footage for signs of the green SUV to figure out when and how it had been left behind. By Thanksgiving, the investigation had generated over 800 leads, interviewed more than 400 people, and analyzed extensive surveillance footage. However, the holiday was incredibly painful for Hania's family, filled with a profound emptiness. Friends and neighbors described the day as excruciatingly sad. The loss of Hania's laughter felt deeply. The community united, offering prayers and finding comfort in their collective hope that she could sense their love, no matter where she was. On November 27, 23 days after her disappearance, the investigation took a tragic turn. Authorities found a body at 4:45 p.m. in a shallow pond, located 10 miles from the abduction site. The body was face down, unclothed, covered by a folding table, with branches and leaves in the hair. Due to advanced decomposition, immediate identification was not possible, but dental records confirmed the identity later. This discovery shattered any remaining hopes of finding Hania alive and deeply affected her family. Neighbors gathered outside their home to provide support and prayers. Lumberton's police chief confirmed the tragic news. He was visibly upset and expressed deep sympathy for Hania's family. The medical examiner later determined that her death was caused by homicide, likely due to asphyxiation from pressure on her throat. There were also indications of abuse violence, but the extent of decomposition made some findings unclear. Authorities, along with the FBI, pledged to keep seeking justice, reassuring the public that they would not stop until those responsible for this terrible crime were brought to justice. The news of Hania's death shocked the community, especially among Hispanic residents, who united to seek justice for her. About 10 days later, authorities made an important discovery. Michael Ray McClellan, a 34-year-old man with a history of abuse offenses, was arrested while on parole at the time of the abduction. Investigators found DNA evidence from an unsolved 2016 abuse assault case that connected Michael to Hania. His arrest provided some sense of closure, but the sorrow over Hania's loss continued to weigh heavily on everyone who knew and loved her. On December 8, Michael went before a state magistrate at the Robeson County Detention Center and was formally charged with multiple crimes related to Hania. He was denied bail and faced a total of 10 charges, which included first-degree murder, first-degree abuse, abuse offenses against a minor under 15, first-degree abuse assault, statutory sexual offense with a minor, first-degree kidnapping, aggravated assault, felony restraint, child abduction, and concealing a body. The prosecution indicated that more charges might be added following the final toxicology and autopsy reports. Investigators believed Michael's actions were driven by racial prejudice and stereotypes, particularly against Hispanic communities, based on a false belief that these communities were vulnerable and involved in banned substance or money. Evidence showed that he intentionally targeted victims in places like the mobile home park where Hania lived. As the legal proceedings continued, Hania's funeral took place, drawing over 1,000 attendees, many of whom wore her favorite color, purple. The ceremony included balloons, flowers, and heartfelt speeches from family and friends. During the funeral, Celsa shared her last moments with her daughter. She spoke of her daughter as someone whose life was tragically cut short, but whose joy could never be taken away. With tears in her eyes, she promised to remain strong and support other families facing similar losses. She also thanked the authorities for their efforts to bring her daughter home. During the service, photos of Hania were displayed. Her friends read heartfelt letters and played her favorite song, A Thousand Years. Her white coffin, with her name in gold letters, was carried by a horse-drawn carriage to a cemetery in Lumberton. After the funeral, the case attracted controversy when District Attorney Johnson Britt revealed that the sheriff's office had DNA evidence that McClellan could be a suspect in the 2016 abuse, but investigators never followed up. According to Britt, an email with that information was sent to the sheriff's office in 2017, copied from the district attorney's office. At the time, Britt said that information should have given the sheriff's office probable cause to obtain a search warrant, take a DNA sample from McClellan, and compare it to the 2016 abuse kit. 3 weeks before Hania disappeared, the Fairmont Police Department issued an arrest warrant for Michael. He was charged with theft and unlawful restraint related to a failed car robbery. However, this warrant was not acted upon until November 13th, which was 8 days after Hania's abduction. Additionally, on October 17th, the State Parole and Post-Release Supervision Commission issued another arrest warrant for parole violations, but no action has been taken regarding this matter. At a press conference, the prosecutor criticized the sheriff's office for mishandling evidence. He argued that the information received in 2017 should have led officers to collect DNA samples from Michael much sooner. After an internal investigation into these mistakes, the Robeson County Sheriff's Office apologized to Hania's family on January 18, 2019. They announced the firing of an investigator and noted that a senior officer with over 34 years of experience, who had been suspended, decided to resign. Police department leaders expressed their anger over the situation, highlighting that issues like improper report handling, inadequate investigations, and poorly conducted interviews indicated a systemic problem. They found these failures very concerning and called for major reforms. In the following years, the family's hope for justice diminished due to ongoing legal delays. The global issues worsened the situation. Hania's mother expressed her frustration from the justice system. During a pre-trial hearing, she urged the judge to expedite the case, claiming that the system had failed her family. On the other hand, Michael's defense argued that the global issues significantly restricted their ability to meet with him. They also had to manage 2 other unrelated felony cases involving Michael, further contributing to the delays. The Superior Court judge informed Celsa that it might take up to 5 additional years after the global issues for such a complex case to reach trial, emphasizing the importance of thoroughness to avoid mistakes that could lead to a retrial. Michael's trial underwent multiple delays and was finally rescheduled for early 2024. During this period, the community kept Hania's memory alive by commemorating her on her birthday, the anniversary of her passing, and other special occasions. Family and friends arranged events to honor her. Neighbors and former classmates remembered her as a beautiful young girl whose life ended too soon, someone who should have enjoyed a long and happy life. On the 2nd anniversary of her passing, Celsa shared that, as a mother, she could no longer look forward to Thanksgiving or Christmas. Her grief had overwhelmed her. These once joyful holidays had turned into painful reminders of her loss, making them hard for her to bear. Michael McClellan was finally brought to trial at the Robeson County Courthouse in North Carolina, where the prosecution aimed for the death penalty. They argued that the severity of his crimes warranted this ultimate punishment. During his transfer to court, Michael made a daring attempt to escape by using a homemade handcuff key. This attempt failed as officers quickly restrained him, but he tried again just hours later, showing his desperation to evade justice. The Robeson County Sheriff suggested that Michael had hidden the makeshift key under his tongue, but it became stuck in the handcuffs during his second attempt. As a result, security measures were significantly increased for the rest of the trial. In court, Michael pleaded guilty to all the charges against him. Confronted by Hania's grieving mother, he gave a brief and disturbing confession. He admitted to kidnapping Hania from her driveway, assaulting her, killing her, and disposing of her body. He also revealed details about earlier attacks in 2016 and 2018, highlighting his pattern of violent behavior. These admissions had a significant impact on his sentencing. The court sentenced Michael to life in prison without the chance of parole. Hania's mother felt both relief and sadness following the sentencing. She expressed gratitude to the authorities and the community for their strong support during the long and difficult process. Although no punishment could reverse the tragedy, she mentioned that the sentence provided her family with a sense of justice and closure. The FBI special agent who led the investigation also felt satisfied with the verdict, hoping it would bring comfort to Hania's family and other victims impacted by Michael's crimes. However, what seemed to be the end of a painful chapter took a surprising turn. While Michael was being transferred to the North Carolina Central Prison in Raleigh, he attempted to escape again. He struck the latch of a guard's firearm holster, causing the weapon to become loose. Michael briefly grabbed the gun, but the transport vehicle's driver reacted quickly, slamming on the brakes and allowing another officer to take the weapon away from him. After a brief struggle, officers used pepper spray to subdue him. Michael then surrendered and was placed in a high-security cell, with authorities considering adding more charges to his already lengthy criminal record. Despite his persistent attempts to avoid justice, Michael is set to spend the rest of his life in prison. The case had a lasting effect on the Hispanic community in North Carolina, increasing their fears and mistrust of local authorities. Community members pointed out the failures of law enforcement in the early investigation and demanded reforms to prevent similar negligence in the future. Love can indeed be blind, but sometimes it borders on insanity. In some instances, it is so blind that it prevents one from recognizing the cruelty directed at loved ones. This can lead to truly horrific outcomes. Maya Chappell was born in March 2020. Her mother was Dana Carr, and her father was James Chappell. Dana herself came from a dysfunctional family, where both of her parents struggled with alcohol abuse. Her father was cruel, often beat both his wife and daughter. All of this left a serious mark on Dana's soul. She ran away from her family as soon as she could provide for herself. This decision likely came just in time. Dana's father was convicted of murder. He ended up in prison, while his 17-year-old daughter was in a relationship with James Chappell, who was already 21. Many believed that Dana was too immature for a serious relationship, marriage, and especially motherhood, but she desperately needed love. Additionally, having a boyfriend was an opportunity for her to escape her dangerous family. They got married and were preparing for the birth of their child. Unfortunately, the relationship with James did not allow the young mother to attain what she wanted. Soon after Maya was born, Dana broke up with James in early summer 2022 because she had begun dating Michael Damon. Their relationship developed rapidly, and by the end of August 2022, they had moved in together. Despite James's efforts to distance himself from Dana, Maya stayed with her mother. The new boyfriend was unemployed, and Dana worked almost 7 days a week to support the entire family. Money was tight, so they saved on everything, including childcare and kindergarten. When Dana went to work, she left her daughter with her boyfriend. The girl's father rarely saw his daughter due to the restrictions imposed by Dana. All of this occurred in the small town of Shotton Colliery, UK. Everything seemed to be proceeding normally, and nothing foreshadowed trouble until one day. On September 28, 2022, around 10 a.m., Michael's stepfather stopped by their house. By this time, Dana and Michael had been living together for a month. According to Dana, everything was fine. However, when he arrived, Maya was acting very restlessly, as if she were afraid of Michael. When asked about his suspicious behavior, Michael explained that he had had a dispute over the phone with several banks that were supposed to give him a loan but refused. Things were not going well for him. He tried to solve his financial problems, managed to convince his stepfather that everything was fine and that there was no need to worry. After his stepfather left, Michael began trying to apply for benefits, contacted several more banks and organizations to secure a loan. However, they also denied him due to his lack of employment and income. Later, Michael called Dana, claimed that her daughter had lost consciousness and was having difficulty breathing. Following this call, Michael contacted the UK emergency services to 999. When paramedics and police arrived at the house, they found Maya in critical condition. She was taken to the Great North Children's Hospital, where she remained unconscious as doctors desperately fought to save her life for the next 2 days. Unfortunately, Maya died in the hospital. An autopsy was performed, revealing multiple injuries to Maya's brain, including severe trauma consistent with violent shaking. Medical experts determined that Michael Damon had likely shaken Maya forcefully, contributing to the fatal brain injuries. 5 witnesses stated that these injuries could have resulted from child abuse. The doctors who treated Maya were shocked by the extent of her injuries. She had extensive bruising all over her body, but it was impossible to determine the exact sequence of events leading to her condition. Even in her intimate areas, a large bruise and marks in various stages of healing were found, although there were no signs of sexual assault. Based on the condition of the bruises, it appeared that most of the injuries had been inflicted on September 28. Dana and Michael were questioned separately. Both denied any abuse towards Maya, offered several explanations. They stated that Maya was very energetic, frequently running and falling, which they said was why she had so many bruises. However, doctors disagreed with their claims, stating that it was impossible for the child to have gotten into such a condition on her own. Detectives began investigating the circumstances related to Maya's death. Family members of Michael and Dana reported that Maya had started developing bruises shortly after they began living together. The first bruises were discovered on August 26. On that day, neighbors saw Maya while walking with their children, and it was apparent that she had marks on her head, which she was trying to hide with her hair. The following day, they met with relatives, including Michael's family, who also noticed that Maya was hurt. Dana and Michael explained that Maya had fallen from a slide, and Dana supported this explanation. Although they managed to calm everyone down, it was difficult to believe their story, especially since the bruise was not only on Maya's head but also inside her left ear. It's hard to imagine how such an injury could occur accidentally. Additionally, there were small bruises around her jaw that looked like they were caused by fingers. On September 5th, Michael called his girlfriend at work to inform her that Maya was having trouble breathing. When Dana requested time off to come home, everything appeared to be fine, but new marks had appeared on Maya's body. Michael quickly brushed them off as injuries from accidental falls in the yard where they had been playing while their mother worked. The next day, when Dana took Maya out again, several acquaintances pointed out a noticeable cut on her nose. A few days later, Maya had a split lip. Each time, the explanations were similar: she was running, fell, and got hurt. Maya was briefly entrusted to Dana's mother so her grandmother could spend time with her. That evening, while bathing Maya, her grandmother noticed bruises all over her body. She took a photo of the bruises and sent it to Dana, who then advised her to take Maya to the hospital. Following this advice, she went to the hospital. When the doctor inquired about the bruises, she shared the usual explanation that Maya was clumsy and very active, often bumping into things both indoors and outdoors. The doctor accepted her explanation, and no one reported the situation to the authorities. On September 14th, Maya visited a kindergarten near their home for the first time. The purpose of this visit was to help her adjust to the new environment. Maya enjoyed her time there, but unfortunately, she never returned. Dana, her caregiver, encountered questions from the staff about the marks on Maya's body, which led her to stop bringing Maya to the kindergarten. The teachers even tried to convince Dana to let Maya return, but she declined, saying that Maya either didn't want to go or was unwell. On September 15th, Maya was scheduled to be given to her biological father, James. However, Dana refused to comply, claiming that Maya was sick. Instead, she left the girl with her mother and stepfather. Dana's mother took Maya to a relative who was a trained nurse. That day, they noticed a large, unusual bruise on Maya's buttocks. It had been concealed by her diaper, but once it was removed, the bruise was clearly visible. They asked Dana for an explanation, and she pointed to Michael, who claimed that Maya had bitten herself. This explanation seemed unlikely, so they decided to take some photos to document the odd injury. During a phone conversation with Dana, Michael repeatedly insisted that he was not at fault, even though no one had accused him of anything. Their behavior raised further suspicion. The following weekend, Maya visited her relatives and was observed with new injuries, including 4 bruises on her chest. What stood out most was the calm attitude of her mother, who insisted that the injuries were merely accidents. On September 27th, Maya had gotten another bruise while they were playing outside. Despite these concerning incidents, Dana remained unbothered and continued to go to work each day, leaving Maya alone with Michael. It later emerged that Dana had repeatedly lied to Maya's father, stepfather, mother, kindergarten teachers Maya's health. This deception was aimed at hiding the true person responsible for the bruises, whom detectives believed was Michael. After Maya died, Dana was the first to be questioned and consistently provided false information. To justify her lies, she created a story claiming she was pregnant during Maya's abuse and suffered a miscarriage due to stress when Maya died, which she described as emotional shock. This made it difficult to extract useful information from her. Meanwhile, Michael exhibited immature behavior. He initially blamed Dana's mother for abuse, then his stepfather, and ultimately Maya's biological father. However, detectives were convinced that the ongoing abuse of Maya was linked to him, as her bruises appeared specifically when she was left alone with Michael. The reason for the abuse was quickly understood. Michael was venting his frustration on Maya. This frustration stemmed from his financial troubles and the threats he faced for failing to pay his debts. On September 28th, Michael had a particularly difficult day when banned substance dealers confronted him, claiming he owed them a large sum of money. These issues had been mounting for several months. They had been persistently pressing him for repayment. Although he was being followed, he had not yet suffered any physical harm. He managed to assure them once again that he would pay them soon. However, he actually did not have the necessary funds and was desperately trying to find a solution. Michael reached out to social services for assistance, but received no help. He then tried contacting banks, but to no avail. This continuous stream of bad news drove him to a breaking point, and he directed his anger towards the little girl. The incident deeply affected Maya's biological father, James. For the past 2 years, he believed he was trying to protect his daughter from her mother, Dana, whom he saw as unfit to care for his daughter. When Dana filed for divorce, she accused James of being aggressive and cruel, claiming their relationship was toxic. James was concerned that Dana might seek revenge, which could harm Maya. Although Dana could not prove her claims about her ex-husband's aggressive behavior, she was awarded primary custody of their daughter. James was only allowed to visit his daughter on weekends. Initially, Dana tried to restrict communication between James and their child, despite his legal visitation rights. She often found ways to prevent their interactions, avoid bringing their daughter to him. Consequently, James had very limited time with Maya. When he noticed bruises on Maya, he asked Dana about them, but she repeatedly made excuses about accidents. Eventually, she began to limit his visits with Maya even more to evade his questions. James believed that if Dana was not directly involved in the abuse of Maya, she at least supported her boyfriend, who probably was involved. From the start, James suspected something was off about Michael, but Dana presented Maya's relationship with Michael as nearly perfect. She claimed that Michael treated Maya like his own daughter, that they spent all their free time together, going for walks, watching movies, and playing games. When James first noticed bruises on Maya, he immediately checked Michael's name in police databases, suspecting he might have a criminal history. To his surprise, Michael had no record. Despite Dana's reassurances, James witnessed changes in Maya's behavior during their brief visits. She had become disobedient, extremely anxious, cried often, and struggled to sleep. He associated these changes with the negative influence of Dana and Michael, but he lacked concrete evidence. One day, when James went to pick up his daughter from the home she shared with Dana and Michael, he found broken windows. Both claimed that some troublemakers were responsible for the situation, but it soon became clear that the damage was caused by dealers trying to intimidate Michael. On James's next visit, he saw that the house had been vandalized with paint. When James suspected his daughter was being abused, he wanted to collect evidence to formally report the situation. Unfortunately, during this time, Dana severely restricted his communication with Maya. She frequently canceled planned visits, claiming to be sick or saying Maya didn't want to see her father. This left James powerless to protect Maya. It soon became clear that these actions were intentional, aimed at allowing Maya's bruises to heal and preventing any inquiries about them. When Maya finally got to visit her father, Dana continued to make excuses for the new injuries, stating that Maya had been with her grandparents for several days, thus shifting the blame onto them for not watching the girl properly. Unfortunately, James faced challenges when trying to communicate with Maya because of her young age. He wanted to talk about her bruises, but every time he brought it up, she seemed to gesture as if something were breaking and simply said, "D." It wasn't until later that James understood she was referring to Michael by a nickname derived from his last name, Damon. Unfortunately, this information came too late to charge him with abusing the little girl. During the investigation, a lot of relevant information emerged from examining Michael's emails and phone records. It became clear that Dana was unaware of the serious situation and believed Michael's false narratives. He often claimed that Maya had fallen while playing on the playground or bumped into something at home. However, such incidents had never occurred in Maya's life before meeting him. These sudden changes in her behavior didn't raise any alarms for her biological mother, who continued to trust what she was told. The detectives questioned why Dana, considering the strange injuries and her boyfriend's suspicious behavior, had not reached out to a medical center, the police, or other professionals. Dana explained that her lack of action was due to her inexperience. When family members began to ask uncomfortable questions about Maya's injuries, Michael responded by saying that if they didn't stop prying into their affairs, he would no longer babysit Maya. Meanwhile, Dana tried to reassure her boyfriend, claiming that she believed him and rationalizing his actions to protect their relationship. Rather than confronting her doubts about Michael, she continued to defend him. The conversation concluded with Dana expressing her love for him, stating that she trusted him and wanted him to keep babysitting her daughter. Despite being shown pictures of her injured daughter, Dana claimed that without her boyfriend's supervision, Maya would have suffered even more. James was taken aback by his ex-wife's apparent ignorance, but he felt powerless to change the situation. Throughout their relationship, Michael repeatedly assured Dana that he would never harm her daughter, and she'd never think ill of him. On the day of the incident, when Michael messaged Dana that Maya was choking, Dana concluded their brief exchange by expressing her love for him and her desire not to lose him, showing little concern for her daughter's well-being. When the child was discovered alive at home, there were immediate and serious suspicions of domestic violence. At the medical center, doctors found numerous bruises on Maya's body in various stages of healing, including what looked suspiciously like bite marks. The autopsy revealed that the child had endured repeated beatings with a blunt object, likely inflicted by an adult's fists. Most of the injuries were concentrated around her head and abdomen, suggesting she may have been violently thrown to the floor. The surgeon who attempted to save Maya noted that her injuries resembled those from a fall from a significant height or a high-speed car crash. Only after hearing these alarming assessments did Dana begin to have suspicions. However, detectives believed Dana was feigning ignorance, as Maya's injuries were the result of consistent abuse from Michael, a situation she likely was aware of. Others around her had been discussing the matter and urging her to recognize the reality of the situation. Michael was interrogated but did not confess to any wrongdoing. After Maya died at the medical center, Michael Damon was charged with murder. During a second interrogation, where he was the main suspect, he continued to deny any guilt. He portrayed his relationship with Maya as loving and claimed he never yelled or swore at her. Michael said he noticed Maya was unwell on the day she stopped breathing. They had been playing Xbox together, and then she went to her bedroom while he continued to play. About 10 minutes later, he heard a loud thud from her room. Upon entering, he found Maya lying motionless on the floor. It looked like she had fallen out of bed twice. He immediately noticed Maya's irregular breathing and called Dana at home, then contacted emergency services. This explanation seemed unconvincing. The detectives interviewed a young man who had visited their home earlier that morning. He was disturbed by Maya's behavior and initially wanted to take her with him. He described her as crying, calling for her mother, looking frightened, and even trying to hide when she saw Michael, indicating she felt uncomfortable around him. When Michael spoke to the young man about the situation, Michael assured him that everything was fine and that there was nothing to worry about. Nevertheless, the young man managed to record a video that showed Maya's unusual behavior, which was later presented in court to contradict Michael's statements. The detectives uncovered numerous calls related to Michael's financial issues and were alarmed by their timing. Michael had temporarily left Maya alone to request loan on his mobile phone, showing a complete disregard for her well-being. Investigators also discovered that Michael was unfaithful to his girlfriend, Dana, as he had a profile on an online dating site and date other women while in a relationship with her. Additionally, Michael was taking steroids along with other prohibited substances, which likely exacerbated his aggressive behavior and emotional instability, leading him to lose control at times. This situation caused trouble for Maya. Dana was ultimately arrested, charged with cruelty toward her daughter for her indifference to the domestic abuse, and chose to stand by Michael instead of leaving him. In October 2023, the trial began. During the trial, Dana expressed that she had been so infatuated with her boyfriend that it blinded her to the reality of the situation. She failed to recognize the harm Michael was causing her daughter and did not believe her loved ones when they tried to warn her. Dana said she didn't fully grasp the consequences of Michael's actions. Many suspected that she was merely trying to avoid prison. During the hearing, the defense attorney attempted to present Dana as a victim of long-term familial abuse, particularly from her father. He highlighted that she had experienced violence throughout her childhood. Ultimately, the attorney's arguments might have evoked some sympathy from the jury, but they did not excuse her lack of concern for Maya. During the trial, Dana expressed discomfort at being in the same room with Michael. She contradicted her previous statements with another falsehood. Initially, she claimed to have suffered a miscarriage after Maya's death. Now, she escalated her claims, stating that she had been pregnant with twins fathered by Michael and that their fate also ended tragically. Dana asserted that she had an abortion upon realizing Michael had killed her daughter and wanted nothing to do with him or his children. This claim was swiftly debunked by prosecutors, who noted the absence of any medical documentation to support her allegations of pregnancy, miscarriage, or abortion. End of trial. Maya's mother, Dana Carr, 24, was convicted of leaving the child to die and sentenced to 9 years in prison. Subsequently, Michael Damon's trial began. Unlike Dana, he chose not to testify in his defense. His lawyer argued that Michael lacked sadistic intent, premeditation, or planning regarding Maya's death, claiming it was an accident. Despite these weak justifications, Michael was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. However, the court allowed for the possibility of parole after 20 years. Maya's funeral was held on November 4, 2022. Following this heartbreaking event, James posted a final message for his daughter on social media. In it, he said goodbye, expressed his sorrow for not being able to protect her, and promised that they would be reunited one day.